Let's get the ones for Week 13 as we predict the top scorers at every position. Marcus, start us off with the quarterback.
I'm going with Patrick Mahomes. And, one of the things that's been sort of great about Patrick Mahomes being kind of meh in fantasy is that we get to talk about him on this show because normally it's like, yeah, man, we know we'll start Patrick Mahomes. And the producers are like, you can't put him in here. He's just too obvious. This year, that's not really the case. This is a guy who went almost a calendar year without getting you 18 fantasy points in one game. Now he's done it 3 times over his last 5 contests. This run actually started in Week 8 against the Raiders. So now he gets the Raiders on the return trip in Kansas City on Black Friday. He's had 3 touchdown passes in 3 of his last 4. And the Raiders kind of went through a mid-season stretch where it seemed like they were good against the pass. This last month, not so much. They have given up 240 or more passing yards in 4 straight games. So I think Mahomes, who looks like a really legit start throughout the playoffs, I think he stays hot this week against the Raiders.
I'm going to go with C.J. Stroud down in Duval. C.J. Stroud in his career has done so well against the Jags, averaging 25 fantasy points per game in 3 career contests, averaging over 300 passing yards. The Jags have allowed a quarterback 1 4 times this season. And so for everybody who's been suffering with C.J. Stroud, congratulations, your 4-8 team will now have an opportunity to get a win as you're trying to sneak into that 6th spot. But C.J. Stroud will come through for you this week.
An underperforming team that's trying to sneak into a real playoff spot, the Miami Dolphins. That's why I believe, as we get to running backs, Devon Achane will be the RB1. He's had 6 games with 20 or more fantasy points this season, 23 points per game when Tua Tagovailoa is the starting quarterback. He has the most touchdowns since Week 8, 2nd most receptions on the team. Fun fact, Devon Achane's played 22 career games. He has 19 career touchdowns. Marcus, I think he's a very good RB option.
I do think he's a very good RB option. I also think Joe Mixon is a very good RB option because he's been one all year long. Yeah, he had a bad game last week against the Titans. That was the worst game he's had since Week 2. And that game was because he got hurt midway through it and didn't get to finish. 10 total touchdowns since Week 6. Going against that Jaguars defense, they've allowed more than 150 rushing yards in a game in 5 of their last 6 contests. They're also giving up the 3rd most receiving yards to running backs. I think we're going to see a lot of Joe Mixon. I mean, Rank just talked about how much he likes C.J. Stroud. This looks like a real good opportunity for the Texans offense to get fat against the Jaguars.
Couple of running backs there. Rank, take us to wide receiver 1.
I'm going to go with A.J. Brown against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know if you said this on the show or before the show. Forgive me. We were talking a lot before the show started about how the Ravens defense looked good on Monday night, but a lot of it was because QT was out there playing volleyball like he was St. John Smith. A.J. Brown is not going to have such problems in this matchup. He's had at least 5+ receptions, 80+ yards in 6 games this season. Only Justin Jefferson has accomplished that and more. And even with what happened last night, the Ravens have still allowed the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers this season. So I feel very confident saying A.J. Brown will be the wide receiver 1.
All right, so Rank had C.J. Stroud as the QB1. Marcus had Joe Mixon as the RB1.
Oh, come on.
Why don't I get in on
Tank
the
Dell.
game and take – no, not Tank Dell. I'll take Nico Collins as the RB1. Another Texan, why not? No one has more yards receiving per game than Nico. The Jags allowing the most passing yards per game this season, 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. And now's the chance, Duval. You can look at our show here on this Tuesday and say, we are motivated. We're going to go out there and clamp up the Texans offense.
I've never been bulletin board material before. This is great.
Well, we're going to get
Doug Peterson is going to be fired up watching this show. I hope it becomes an angle on Dynamite this week.
Andre Sisco's clutching his fists.